So I bought 17 acres of land to live on instead of buying a normal house. Now, the main three questions I get are, where did you find the land? How did you afford the land? And how did you get planning permission to live on it? I'll try and answer most people's questions in comments, etc. And I've done a couple of videos before, but I'll go over them all again now. So, where do you find land? And the simple answer is, look on the internet, as that's probably your easiest and best bet. You might find some deals on there, but I've mentioned other ways in videos like talking to local peoples in areas you want to buy to get better deals. They are more difficult. Internet, go for it. Search farms or land on onthemarket.com, Zoopla. They've all usually got a section for it. The hurdle for most people is finances, and how do you afford to do this? Obviously you could sort of be lucky in a way, not so lucky in another way, that you could get money from a deceased relative's house sale, etc., to be able to afford to buy a piece of land and then afford to build everything you want on it. I got a little bit of money from the sale of my gran and granddad's bungalow, got about 20,000, and that combined with personal loan and a bit of savings managed to mean I could afford this place. But just as doable with basically 2 or 3 personal loans, depending on if you can obviously afford to pay them, which would probably be in the region of about £350 for about 20 grand, I think it is. Obviously you can just get multiple personal loans from multiple banks, just as long as you can afford it is the main thing. There is actually such a thing as finance available for lands. It's technically a business asset loan, so they'll only lend you about 50-60% of the value of the land you're looking for. But again, could be quite useful if you can afford the payments to be able to top yourself up and afford that bigger bit of land that you're after. Finally, I've been through this in detail in many a video before, but I'll go through it again briefly. How do you get planning permission? And the simple answer is, you want an agricultural based business, and then everything is pretty easy to sort of tick boxes to be able to enable the council to allow you permission effectively. A lot of it comes under permitted development rights when you're talking about agricultural stuff. So the council can only really state objections to certain parts, and as long as you can remedy those, you can sort of get what you need through and skirt around a lot of the general rigmarole of a full planning application. As I've mentioned before, that obviously requires decent amount more work though, because you will need to be operating the business to be able to get those things, and you'll also need 12.5 acres of land. And to get a couple of barns and stuff is relatively easy with permitted development, but when you're talking about living, again, you need to provide evidence that your business is working. It needs X amount of man hours of you being here. A bit more rigmarole than just normal permitted development rights, but a hell of a lot easier than trying to just randomly apply for permission for a house in the middle of a field without any kind of business that requires you to be on site. There are other things that you can get around it with, like equestrian and stuff like that, but most councils don't really favour other things apart from farming effectively. So I hope that's a good little summary for you, and hopefully gives you a bit more of a sort of broad spectrum idea of what you can do and sort of how easy things are, because they are relatively easy. It's a bit of stress, a bit of time, but not as difficult as you would believe. And as always, if you do have any questions, etc., just drop them in the comment box below. I'll do my best to get back to you. And also, if you watch this much of the video, hit that like button if you haven't, because it'll help me on the algorithm.